Previously, we talked about Russia when we look at the Suwałki Gap and how Russian forces may be invading NATO territory. Of course, we saw in World War II, it wasn't just one war against one country, it was a world war. And when we see things heating up specifically around the world, the number one fear that Americans have is a war with China. It's a very real fear, by the way. And some of the things that actually happened recently should make that fear even grow if you understand what's happening. Let me jump into a couple articles. Did you see this? This literally just came out. Biden imposed heavy tariffs on China, saying they're not competing, they're cheating. And basically what's happening is Biden is expected to impose heavy import tariffs on a number of Chinese products during the next few days. And some of those tariffs being so great that literally it's going to double the amount of price for the Chinese. And one of the things I've talked about with the Chinese, of course, they want Taiwan. Even more specifically, it's not even a matter of just them looking at Taiwan as being China originally. Of course, it was done originally. Taiwan wants independence now. It's those semiconductor factories on the island of Taiwan. These semiconductor factories are so vital in producing the major heavy-duty chips that the world sees or needs, and China really wants that. So when we see tariffs on China, this could be literally the straw that breaks the camel's back, because understand, China wants to invade Taiwan. Understand this, logistically or military speaking, they want to do that. But right now, China sells a whole bunch of stuff to America. They don't want America to get mad. They don't want America to have more tariffs and problems. So they're playing nice while they can. But they know a time's going to come, especially if our economy goes down, which it will. The Chinese economy is going down, which it will. And all these things happening will set up a situation, a scenario in which China's like, you know what? We're not getting a lot of money from America anyway. So you know what? Time to go ahead and launch that invasion. And off they go to take over Taiwan. But the interesting part is, Biden, by signing this into effect, is making the tariff so high. This may simply just be like, you know what, China, I know you don't like this, but pop, and now we're punching them real quick and saying, take that. Now we're actually going to make it so we're not buying as many goods from you. That could be this straw that breaks the camel back, where China will say, you know what, time for invasion. So specifically, how hard will the new tariffs hit on China be? Long story short, hard, because China is likely to hit back against the United States on other things, for example, like electric vehicles. Biden set to raise tariffs on China's electric vehicles from 25 to 100%. China is very likely to retaliate. And from here specifically, they're talking about electric vehicles that would pose risk to U.S. domestic electrical vehicle market. And this article from Business Insider is talking about specifically electric vehicles. And solar is part of this too, by the way. But that's not the point. The point being is it is imposing tariffs that basically makes it so China cannot sell to the United States as easily. Right now, America is waking up to Chinese junk. Finally. In fact, China is not the number one importer of the United States anymore when it comes to these goods. You know that? Now it's Mexico. I'm happy to buy stuff from Mexico, more than happy to buy stuff from Mexico, because Mexico has just a lot of decent people trying to make a living. China is becoming imperialistic. So with this, understand the next step is going to be, potential war. Because we saw that same thing back pre-World War II, how the U.S. economic warfare provoked Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. Because Japan at the time was becoming imperialistic, and they needed lots of raw materials, which a lot of them came from the United States, by the way, but also oil to drive that military machine. And as we saw that becoming more imperialistic, the president at the time really liked China for some reason, which a lot like today's president, which is really weird, for weird affection for this. But what happened was he imposed sanctions, made it so Japan couldn't have the oil, and they practically, in their eyes, saw no choice but to attack Pearl Harbor. They intended not to bring the United States into a war. I'm sure you know your history, but they intended to try to get us to say, okay, never mind, we'll back off. But of course, it launched us in the world. So what's going to be the next attack? What's going to happen? Is China going to do something similar to the United States? Probably not, but to Taiwan to get us to back off? Perhaps. Because this is TSMC, which stands for Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. This is that major company we're talking about. With this company, 92% of high-end chips purchased in the U.S. are made by TSMC. 92%. And if China takes Taiwan, they have those plants. There's actually been a lot of talk lately that the United States is going to sabotage those plants, or the Taiwanese will. They'll basically destroy them before they fall into the hands of the Chinese. Either way, we're seeing a major problem for the fact that 92% of our semiconductors coming from here will stop, and we're in big trouble. Because the U.S. Commerce Secretary said the U.S. economy would be devastated if China seizes TSMC. Devastated. And I've mentioned this in the past. And it's interesting how the Secretary of Commerce just said the same thing, that literally if we saw China invade Taiwan, our market would crash. You think that Biden's going to put tariffs on China is going to really frighten China? China is going to take that step. They already said they are anyway. They made it very clear they will, either peacefully or through war, will take Taiwan. And when that happens, just like we saw in World War II, we saw a major problem, not simply just with tariffs and war, but economically speaking tied to this. And this is what's coming. So as preppers, that's one of the things we certainly need to look for. We need to prepare for, because our economy is not looking so good. China's economy is not looking so good. And now these tariffs imposed on China could literally be that one catalyst launching into the next Pearl Harbor, which will not be on American soil, but will be on Taiwanese soil, taking over the semiconductor plants. And now in the United States, we're in big trouble, heading us into World War III. Two fronts. One side as far as NATO goes, the other side with China. It's shaping up a lot to be just like World War II, but of course World War III now with a whole new battlefields in place. And of course, that's for preppers. This is where we need to prepare, because we're going to see some major problems, far worse than World War II. We're already having problems with our food industry. Having food and prepared with food is an important place to start. But the security of your family, of our nation, certainly is in play. And we have to be able to protect our families.